Hello everyone, welcome along to this weekly update video for the 22nd of January. So we're going to try and cover two things in this. One will be the recent TFM blog post, and then I would like to touch on the recent rather chaotic release of Eurofly 3's beta. So first of all, let's kind of go into TFM, because I think that's really the main thing that people will be interested in following the channel and the weekly update videos. That's kind of the bread and butter, right? So as you may or may not know, Andy, one of the main developers of TFM, recently launched a business called Inspiragon. I believe I'm saying that right. To quote from the blog post, this business aims to develop and essentially promote software tools for students and professionals so that they can complete work tasks independently. And so the idea is that TFM and Inspiragon formed a partnership, or agreed to a partnership. And this is a transactional relationship in that Inspiragon will pay out some of TFM's current development expenses in exchange for revenue of TFM paid add-ons. That means several things, I guess. One of them being that TFM now has to create paid add-ons if it's to meet the terms of this partnership. It also means that TFM has to probably look at a modular system. So they talk about the fact that this modular system will not require a full redesign of existing projects, but that it will essentially involve modular add-ons for various new features being sold at potentially a monthly or yearly subscription rate through Inspiragon. The core of TFM would remain open source and free to use, but this modular design would ensure that new features would be available through add-ons, and you could decide as a user what you think is relevant to you and what you want to go ahead and purchase. Personally, I think this is a really good step. I have long thought that TFM needed to go payware, and it's not a very popular thing, I guess, to do, right? In a surface view, because obviously we don't want to put Flight Sim behind too much of a paywall. But I think if we're going to be pragmatic about it, a lot of Flight Sim is behind a paywall. Pretty much everything you get within Flight Sim is behind some form of paywall, right down to the smallest things like Navigraph or sound packs, and then up to the larger things like aircraft and simulators. A lot of things are payware, right? You don't get much for free. So I think having TFM partially go behind some form of a paywall allows for the sustainability of the project well into the future, because I think we can all agree that TFM goes through a lot of ups and downs, where a lot of development activity takes place, a lot of new projects get started, but the ability for the developers to commit to things, to commit their time, and to commit that things will get finished within a certain time frame is limited, right? Because they don't get any income off of TFM. So, they have to get income from other methods, and that means that their time might be up and down as well. So I think if TFM is going to be a more sustainable project, it has to evolve, and it has to go into some form of a paid system where they have a stream of income that allows them to continue developing TFM sustainably. I think that's probably why they're looking at a subscription model as well. It's not much good having a new module come out and everyone purchase it, and they get some sort of temporary injection of funds, and then it dries up. Through a subscription model, you end up with a relatively sustainable form of income. So I think it's smart, and I think for the few people who may find it objectionable, there will be many more people who find it very useful in the future when we start to see the fruits of this, and we start to see that this is a more sustainable project now, and they're able to follow up on more of the things that are promised because they have the time and the security to do so. They know that income is coming as well, and so they're not worrying about that as another issue within their lives. That's not to say that the income from TFM is going to be, some kind of crazy amount that's going to set these developers up for life, and make them, rich beyond their wildest dreams. But I think the community is quite expansive, and I think, TFM has a market share that is very large, right? There's not many things that do what TFM can do, right? Maybe there's some overlap with some of the features in the other in some other programs, but really the core of TFM is very unique, right? So TFM has a massive market share, and people are generally gonna have to buy what they, if they really want something and TFM's the only thing offering it, they're gonna have to purchase it. I don't believe that they would make prices that are unreasonable, but the point I'm making is, TFM has a great opportunity because of the fact that from a purely business standpoint, it really is the only thing doing what it does, and that's the nature of the beast, right? I mean, anyone can go and create their own form of TFM from the ground up and come and compete. Nobody's stopping anyone doing that. They can do that. They could come and create that and undercut TFM and say, well, we're going to offer it for cheaper and we've made our own. Well, then, that's how free market works, right? But, right now, TFM has the lion's share of the market. So it really has the ability to take it in whatever direction it wants, with community feedback, of course, as well. So I think it's a very smart decision, and I think it's something we're going to transition to over time. So alongside that, pretty much everyone on the survey, or the poll I should say, that was released about previews, said that they wanted to see the return of previews. So the latest preview is available for download, and again, they put the usual disclaimer in just to say that if any damage is caused or you have any issues, then it's not on them. It is a preview, and it's not going to be something that you're going to get instant support for, but it is a preview, so it's there and you can download it and take a look at the quite extensive changelog, because there is going to be quite a lot, especially if you're coming from the latest release version to the latest preview. And that takes us on to the flows and checklists priority. So what we've been discussing as a community over the past week or so is the rather disappointing release of First Officer version 5. Now, again, don't get me wrong, like I said in the previous week's video, it is usable, right? It's not a totally unusable product. There are ways around things. The flows and checklists are not perfect. They do some rather odd things here and there. And there are some changes in there that we're not so pleased about, but it probably is usable, right? I mean, you could get by with it if you had to, presuming the kind of workarounds and quirks. But what it brought to light was that we are very reliant on First Officer, and the guy is branching out into a lot of different things. He tried to make it a sort of passenger simulation, as we know. Now he's doing this whole career simulation, and there is a concern that he's maybe trying to do too much. And we've had promises previously that he's going to improve accessibility on the performance dialogue, in the settings dialogues, and all these kind of things. And if you're being charitable, you might say, well, maybe he just doesn't really know how to do it, But if I'm being realistic, I might say, well, he has been given information on how to do it. And there's other things that have maybe rubbed some people the wrong way, myself included, including the fact that he did not show up twice to a podcast that we had arranged with him to do. So if anyone's wondering where that was, well, we tried. He didn't show up twice. He just wasted our time. So ultimately, we end up relying on this product. And first officer's, going to be there, so it's still going to be something you can use for years to come if you wish. But ultimately, the core of a first officer program is supposed to be the checklists and flows, and people are having more issues with them. And it just highlights that, whilst they've been stable enough in the past that we could rely on them, they're starting to get a bit unstable, and it's just not ideal that we are, becoming a bit beholden to the whims and wishes of some other developer who doesn't seem to either know or really care about accessibility. I can't say that some of the issues are intentional. I think a lot of it probably is just issues that might get ironed out, but some of the accessibility issues have been there for quite a while, and it's not like this version was a big improvement. So essentially the argument is that the priority of checklists and flows within TFM are going to get pushed up. They do need to complete the 737 panels, just make sure that everything's all polished with that. I mean, obviously they're in a very good state right now in comparison to all the other PMDG aircraft, but they need to just polish them up with the transition that's been going on. As you can see from the release version to the preview version, quite a bit's changed. But then the priority of that, the flows and checklists, has certainly gone up within the list, because it's just a bit unstable, this first officer situation. And so to have something that we know is always going to be there is going to be useful. Not to mention, that again, we are rather reliant on first officer when new aircraft come out. We're kind of sat here waiting for first officer to release their version of that aircraft, as we'll find, I think, with the 777. And given the panel situation with that aircraft, we are going to be quite reliant on first officer. So it would be good, and that's not going to happen anytime soon with TFM's flows and checklists for the 7.3, never mind the triples. This is not something that's going to happen in the next month or something, but it would be good in the years to come if we know that we can rely on TFM rather than first officer when we are looking for flows and checklists for a new aircraft, because ultimately the checklists and flows that first officer uses are very much just standard checklists, and the flows are just a set of actions. So they're not unique to first officer, and there's nothing to say that we can't reuse a lot of the information that we know from first officer to create our own. And so yeah, I think that's going to happen over time as well. Right, briefly, there's also the Spring 2024 feedback survey, which I'll rattle through here. It talks about most users using P3D, but most voted to continue development, kind of moving away from P3D. I think that makes sense. A lot of people still do use P3D because of the long haulers, right? They don't want to let go of the long haulers. Makes sense. But they also recognize that, slowly we are moving away from P3D. We're going to get the 777 probably next few months, and then the 7.4 to follow. So I think that makes some sense. Paid aircraft were most voted for. I don't even think that needs any comment, to be honest with you. I think more complex aircraft are definitely something that people want to see. they only really use the freeware aircraft in P3D now, myself included, out of necessity, just to fly something different. And that is pretty much all that's relevant. There's a bit more on the blog post you can read, but at risk of making this video too long, I'll leave it there on the survey. There's nothing that's too surprising, I would say. That was the spring survey, actually. I'm not sure if I said the fall survey out of habit there, but anyway, that was the officially titled the Spring 2024 survey, which was sort of a slightly modified fall survey, but they're now doing it as a spring survey after the turnout on the fall survey wasn't kind of as expected. Let me also then briefly touch on Eurofly 3 and their beta release. So yeah, I think to describe it in a word would be chaotic. To be honest with you, there were a lot of issues initially with the download process, the servers getting rammed, the launcher wasn't working properly, people couldn't start their engines on any of their aircraft. I don't know how that happened. That one really cracked me up. A lot of these issues are now fixed. So the launcher supposedly is now fixed. The engines now start on some of the aircraft, not all of them, apparently, but you start out with a Cessna 152 in your training, and that one works at least. So yeah, I'm not going to go into this too much. I don't think it's worth it. But, just remember, it is a beta, so obviously there are going to be issues. The guy doing the tutorials, Lucas, rage quit the mailing list because it was, too much for him to deal with. I don't think a mailing list is an ideal place to have these bug reports filed. I think a much more standardized system would have been better. It allows the cataloging of bugs, it allows the assigning of bugs to different people to deal with, it allows the deletion of duplicates. I could go on just using a mailing list for this kind of thing. There's over 300 members on this mailing list and everyone's sending several emails a day. You can imagine it's just chaos. It's not an ideal situation to have feedback for a beta. That being said, it's getting a little bit more stable now in terms of the initial bugs that were showstoppers. So but yeah, it is a beta. These kind of things are expected, but I have to say it all seemed a bit amateurish, the release and the way it was handled. Yeah, it was a bit of a joke. But, I hope that these issues continue to be ironed out and that the beta can actually be of some use. I'm not sure that I'm running a public beta on a list like Eurofly with the colourful characters, some of them that are on there, let's say, was the best idea, to be honest with you. I know you need more people for a beta than maybe we had, or it was on the private beta. But yeah, to open it up to 330 people, and probably more who aren't on the list as well. Yeah, you especially when you have a no real system to track bugs and this kind of thing and have people report them efficiently. I'm not sure it was the best idea, but yeah. Anyway, that's going to do it. I'll see you in the next video, and hopefully this was pretty informative.